Storytime.
Hey.
How are you, sweetie?
Hey. All the better for seeing you.
Likewise.
Aren't you beautiful?
Thank you. I made it myself extra beautiful for the anniversary. I was really exhausted early and I was like, oh my god, I don't know if I can make it this late tonight. But then I was like, no, I'm gonna make myself pretty and then I have to.
How has your week been?
Exhausting. Studying is just really dragging on. How have you been? No, that was fucking adorable.
I really enjoyed the true facts about the owl.
I'm glad you did. There are so many of those, like about all the animals and plants. It's such a good series. Well, I have alcohol-free beer with elderberry in it.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm all fancy.
If only there was elderberry-free beer with alcohol in it.
Yeah, no alcohol for me at the moment.
I have a red breast.
Good for you.
In a glass with a pheasant on it.
Okay. Yay, birds.
Yay, birds.
Now we changed my medication and I'm not allowed to drink. So.
Shit.
Well. I had been drinking on my own too much anyway lately, so.
Yeah. Today was my last day in my job.
Oh, wow, okay. How are you feeling about that?
Okay, hasn't really sunk in yet.
Mm.
It's been a rough ride this past few months.
Year.
A lot of the stress was only in the last few months. So. Since I came back from.
You were stressed about it, like from the summer when you heard they were on the rocks.
That's true. But yeah, I think I'd be glad to move on. I get a week off next week and then I start my new gig the week after.
Oh, so you have a new gig already, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yay! And week off.
I have a week off too.
Ah, that's great. I'm gonna have a week off. Like after my exams.
What?
Because I learned the day before yesterday, I learned the date of my oral exam and it's pretty late, so I can just take a week off after my written exam before I start studying again. I'm really happy about that. That really takes the edge off a little bit to know that. And also the oral exam is going to be shorter than it would usually be. It's going to be one subject less than it would usually be because of Corona. They just want fewer people in the same room, and otherwise it would have been like 4 professors testing us, and now it's only 3. So yay, one less. And the 4th subject would have been like a random one. which really stressed me out because it could be anything and you only know 1 month beforehand. They let you know, and then you have to like, yeah, and like if it's something like ENT that I like, that's okay, but if it's something like pharmacology or microbiology, then I would be fucked. And they got rid of that for corona reasons, so I'm really happy about that. So it's only going to be like internal medicine and surgery, like the big subjects, and then my subject of choice, which is radiology. And so it's going to be,
Yay.
Excellent.
yeah. At least one good thing comes out of this.
Yeah.
We've got story time.
Yeah, that
Two
is
good things.
yay. I'm going to be joining Storytime every day on my week off. Oh, I'm so looking forward to that. And I've got a new person.
You got a new person?
I've got a new person.
Tell
And
us
he's,
more.
huh?
Tell us more.
I met him on OkCupid,
Ooh.
and we were both looking for cuddles with someone who's reasonable corona-wise. And he lives 10 minutes down the road. And it's just perfect. I can just pop over for a cuddle for an hour and go back home. It's just like, yeah. And he's really sweet and cuddly and sensitive and kind and supportive.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's great to hear.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it.
Forgive me, I'm quite tired tonight. I've had a week of because I was the last developer at the company, apart from Jonas, who was on paternity leave, and has been away for like the last year.
Mm.
Everybody else had left, and it was just me trying to hand over the whole of the
Everything.
software infrastructure to a new consultant that started at the start of the week.
Oh man.
And it's just like, everything. So I was, yeah, it's been a long week, but now it's done.
That's good.
I'm left feeling quite tired.
Me too. I don't know how long I'm gonna last tonight either. It was just like, I don't know. I thought this week studying was gonna get better. But because I'm done reading all the chapters that my like I've got this learning platform on my that we get access to from our university, and they give you like a really good plan about like on day one you read these chapters and you answer these questions. So they're old exam questions, and they've done a really good job of making it a shorter plan because we had less time. That usually it would be a 100-day plan, and we have a 50-day plan because it was like Corona fucked everything up. And they did a really good job of only keeping like the essentials and stuff. But so I was going to be done reading chapters and was only going to be answering old questions from now on and like reading up on stuff that I got wrong. But I thought it was going to be like so much more relaxed, but it wasn't. It's like 180 questions per day, and then loads of stuff I have to read up on, and it's like, oh, just
That sounds pretty heavy.
yeah.
Where are all the humans?
Yeah, I'm wondering that too.
They're all
So
lit.
we were early, so
We were on time.
I'm gonna microwave my mug cake that I prepared.
Do it.
I'm gonna eat it with my Storytime spoon. I wanted to make a Biscoff mug cake, but they don't sell the Biscoff cream at my shop anymore, or they were out of it the last 2 times I went. They don't have the Biscoff stuff anymore. Oh, it's the unicorn. I haven't seen it. Hey,
Where? Unicorn?
unicorn. Ewan. I haven't seen him in ages.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Ariane.
Hiya.
Look at that lovely face.
It's mine.
It is.
And the lovely face.
Hey, Tabby Tab.
Hey.
Is that a teddy bear onesie?
No, that's just like a blue fluffy. But it's got like kind of like wave patterns, cloud, I don't know, zigzag.
Little tiny people can walk up the stairs and go and sit on your shoulders.
Oh yeah, they could come and see my boobs.
Oh, hi, Ariane. What a moment to join the conversation. What's happening?
Katie's responsible for this.
It's all my fault.
I mean, I could well believe that. What is Katie responsible for? And then I will know how severe to be.
So many things.
I'm responsible for the little tiny people climbing up the stairs on Ariane's jumper and sitting on her boobs.
Yeah.
He said there was like a zigzag pattern on my jumper, and he said for tiny people to climb up the stairs. And they said, yeah, to sit on my boobs.
That's so cute.
Delightful.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of all of this. Hello, everybody.
Oh, all the people.
Happy birthday!
Yay!
Happy birthday, story time! Yay! Who have we got? Hi, Jenny. Hi, Kitty and Nick. Hi, Ivan. Sparkly lights, Ivan. We've got Ariane. We've got Carmen and Ewan. Hi, Carmen and Ewan. Hi. Hey, Tabby. We've got Jen. Malcolm. Lyric's here as well.
I'll be on camera in a second. I'm just putting away my extra sorbet.
Sorbet, you say?
Sorbet, you say?
Extra sorbet.
Hi, Ian. Margarita. Who else is drinking tonight?
Various people.
Various people.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
To story time.
To story time.
Just story time.
Oh,
Oh, right?
nice.
You two are quite jolly. Have you enjoyed one or two of those?
No.
No, actually, no.
Actually, no. It is very excitable.
Just happy to be here. Happy to be here with y'all.
Delight.
I'm only pretending to be drinking, by the way. It's alcohol-free. But it's delicious.
Good.
That's all that matters.
Yeah,
That's
as long
all
as
that
you're
matters.
happy.
How is everybody? All of you. How are you all?
We're all yours, Frankie.
Oh.
Oh, you. What a smoothie. Are you this smooth naturally, or do you polish?
It's only for you.
Oh my God!
I've got some competition.
Put the moves on your lady.
Okay.
Got a Cara bear.
We got a good. No fucking way.
Hi.
Hi, Cara Bear.
Hi, Cara.
Hi. I won't stay too long because I'm having a rough day. But I wanted to make sure I popped in for a few minutes at least.
Oh, I'm so glad you came in. I'm sorry to hear that you were having a rough day, my darling.
We'll see how long I last. Headaches and screens don't go together well, but
Yeah.
Lovely, and that's very nice, very helpful.
Yay.
It's another birthday human.
We have another.
Happy
birthday, Rory.
Hi, Rory.
Hi, Rory.
You guys,
Also,
have you folks seen the cake that
Yeah, it looks so
various
good.
people?
Can I try?
Do you make that, Bracken?
Oh no, Jesus, no. I went to a professional bakery for this shit. It's so good. It's lemon sponge, and it's got lemon and elderflower curd on the inside, which is so tangy. And then there's a delicate lemon buttercream frosting as well, so it's not too sweet. It's like the perfect balance.
Yeah, I do not have like a rarefied palate or anything, but this is exquisite. Yeah,
sounds great.
I want it. I want it. Happy birthday, Rory.
Happy birthday, Rory.
Rory time. Rory time.
Rory's like
Tomorrow.
Perhaps one of the highlights of today was I got to ride in the van with Malcolm and Bracken, and I got the aux cord the entire time. It was incredible.
It is your birthday.
I know. 4 hours of death grips. Just.
Hi, Robert. Oh, what's being dropped in the chat? What's being dropped?
This will be the link for the Terrible Men tournament.
Oh, Katie, you're so on it. Thank you so much. I really hope that this evening all goes swimmingly and to plan. And can I just take this opportunity to say thank you so much to Lyric and Katie for basically organising this entire thing. I have not been, I've been completely hands off. My hands have been elsewhere.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh, yeah.
Been a busy bee.
Yeah, it's been nice but frantic. And so thank you so much to Lyric and Katie for being absolute bosses and making sure this party happened. And spoon feeding me everything that I needed to know. Yay! Team story time! Team story time! Woo! 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 Oh, how are we doing for time? What time is it? What time is it?
Time is it?
Oh my god. Oh, no.
My cock's just on.
Ba ba da da da, ba ba da 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 da, ba ba da da shoo ba doo ba doo, ya ba da 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 da.
Story time. Okay, now everyone, this time, everyone blow out the lighter.
Oh, Larry, you're the best.
Too cute.
It's just because I always have fire, isn't it?
It's too cute and wholesome. I can't deal with it.
Read the story.
Okay, so
I'll
right.
move. I'll move.
Right. Farewell, Zach. Now, the way that this is going to work tonight is we have a packed schedule of exciting things happening. I'll move you around a little bit more. So we have some readings from some lovely people, and we have the Storytime Terrible Man tournament, and then I am going to read the Snail, and then to close out we have a song from Lyric. So there's going to be lots of exciting things happening, but the Terrible Man tournament heats are going to be in between the readings. And we've got a lot to get through. So for the first round, we're doing 2 heats at a time. So we're going to open with round 1, which is Monty's dad from A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue versus the genie from 1,000 Nights. So Monty's dad was an abusive, hypocritical father, awful, terrible man. The genie, as Katie has noted, has killed so many people, including 300 previous wives. It's important to notice that this is the genie from 1,000 Nights, not from the golem and the genie, who is still a bit of an a-hole.
When did he kill 3,000 wives?
Yeah, I forgot to upload that chapter. Sorry, everybody. So we are talking 1,000 Nights, our unnamed heroine, and the genie from that. So Katie is, I don't know how this is going to happen. Katie, is this happening? Is there a link that people are able to vote on?
Do we get some manner of discussion at all?
I don't think so. No, I think this is a decision that each person must decide for themselves. And if you haven't been here for either or both of those books, you can vote anyway.
Okay, wait, is it who would win in a fight between the two of them, or is it who is worse between the two of them?
I think
who do we hate the most?
I think it's who do you hate the most?
But should you take points off if they're not actually a man?
Don't quibble with me. Don't you bring
they
your
call me the quibbler
in here. I listen.
1,000 Nights. Is it genie?
Yeah, he was a listen, folks. We've got so many of these to get through.
How long do you want to give people, Frankie?
I'm going to do this like we did for Saucy Time. So
wait, where is the voting?
Oh,
it's in the chat.
I followed the link though, and
it will activate when Frankie says now.
Oh, okay. Activate now.
Katie, you said the chat. There's nothing in the chat on Zoom.
There is now.
No, there's a link, and if you follow the link,
no, on my
just opened.
There's
not
like again.
This is so complicated.
It should not be complicated.
You have to click on polls.
It is if
instead
you're
of
on a
Q&A.
phone.
Thanks, Martin. That's great.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Martin. I don't know what's happening, but thanks, Martin. Everyone else is thanking Martin, so I'm going to thank Martin as well.
Let's just thank Martin for his existence.
Yay! Thanks, Martin. Woo!
Oh, Ash's little face with Lisa right now.
So,
let me know when to close the poll, Frankie.
Close it now.
No, I mean,
Close it now.
Hold on, cotton pick in second.
It's closed.
Okay.
Still loading Chrome up.
Oh well. Listen, this is going to be a ramshackle affair.
This is not phone friendly.
It is on my phone.
I'm very sorry to everyone to whom it isn't phone friendly. I think you might just have to deal with a little bit of frustration and angst here, because otherwise we're going to be voting till midnight. So round one voting. So before we have our first reading, we have the second round of voting, which is from Chocolat, Francis Reynaud. The terrible priest thinks he's better than other people, sets fire to travelers, and thinks that you should stay in abusive marriages, as marriage is sacred. Versus the wizard from Dealing with Dragons, who kills the king of the dragons and is generally greedy and devious, and also patronizing and a twat. So, if voting can open, and then I'm going to give people a count of 10 and I pray that this is working.
People are voting.
Oh yeah, we're voting.
It's closed. Voting's closed. Yay, no more voting. Okay.
Was that even a minute? Wow.
We made it. It's 10 seconds. This is very fast. This is fast round. We made it, everybody, and we've made it to the first reading, which
I think I'm gonna go and join on my laptop.
Okay.
Everybody, les enfants. Okay, I'm going to mute y'all because there is going to be a reading, and also an announcement, which I don't know anything about, and I'm very, very excited to find out what it is. So, Katie, do you have a reading and an announcement for us?
You muted me as well.
I have to just mute everybody, my darling. I'm doing this on my phone.
How awful. So I'll do the reading first so that everyone isn't too excited. And this is a poem by F.R. Scott called Caring. Caring is loving, motionless, an interval of more and less between the stress and the distress. After the present falls the past, after the festival, the fast, always the deepest is the last. This is the circle we must trace, not spiraled outwards, but a space returning to its starting place. Center of all we mourn and bless, center of calm beyond excess. Who cares for caring has caress.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, we have an announcement. And do we have an Andrada? I think I saw an Andrada. Yeah, we have an Andrada. So Frankie, darling, we all, the Storytime crew, banded together, as you know, and we made a card for you, which you got last week. But we also all wanted to chip in so that you would have something to remember us by. So Zach has been a collaborator and is going to produce a couple of things, one for each of your new households, which represent some of the love that we have for you.
You have new knives. Everyone watching, they look like this. They are beautiful.
We love you.
You do need to give Zach some money though, because this is a Canadian, Jewish, possibly other cultural thing.
Oh shit, yes. We'll do that later.
You have to give
There's
someone a coin.
If they give
You
you
have to pay for them with a penny.
Doesn't have to be right now. It's okay. That can be tomorrow. That can be tomorrow. You're getting gifts from people who love you. That's what's happening.
We also wanted you to have a very comfy bottom, so we recruited one of our wonderful crafters, Andrada, who is now going to display what she is working on.
And you'll need to talk, Andrada, so we can see you. Unmute yourself.
Hello. So I failed at yarn chicken, so it's kind of unfinished, but this is one bit of it.
Yay.
And this is the other bit of it.
That's so cute.
That's so
with,
Yay!
you know, yarn chicken failure.
And there was various discussion about buying vases.
Andy, you need to mute yourself.
Yep.
Vases and coffee cups and aprons and other gifts for you, but we learned through Zach that you have opinions on these things, so we put some money in the pot so that you could buy them for yourself, but think of us when you use them, because you've done so much for us this last year, Frankie. It's been one of the only good things that's come out of COVID for me, is having this time that you've made for all of us and brought so many people together.
I'm so glad Zach's there to hug you, by the way.
Yeah, Zach, hug her just extra for all of us. There's going to be a lot of numbers of hugs, but you can do that for the time we're here.
I'll hug you while you hold knives, it's fine.
This must be a story time record for as early as possible when we can get Frankie crying.
Yeah. Zach, you need to imitate all the hugs we would give Frankie, all the different types of hugs.
Okay. I'm going to give you a Malcolm hug. I'm really tall.
Oh my god! Oh,
look at this knife,
folks. These are. It's so heavy. It's so heavy.
Presume.
Look how beautiful that is. Oh my god!
Yes.
Thank you, Ainsley.
You're welcome. I'm glad you like them.
Oh.
They're what I would have bought for myself if I were buying myself knives just now.
Yay. Are the same one?
They're different ones.
They are different ones.
Oh god, they're so. Okay, hold on. We'll play with these.
I'm not going to play
later.
Yeah.
We decided they should be close enough in similarity that you could have one at each house, but different enough that should they live together, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
So there's a butcher's knife and a Santoku one.
Oh, nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. We all love you.
Like seriously, Frankie, this essentially became an online home away from home for so many of us this past year. We actually had a social space that we could go regularly and see friends and not think about it. And I don't know how many people have that outside of dance classes since like high school, probably. So yeah, thank you for giving us this space to go and exist in and have a consistent group of chosen family to get through the shit show that was the past year together.
Love you. Thank you. Thank you for this, and thank you for being here this year, and for making this community and this space, and for staying with me for all of this. This has been a complete lifeline for me as well. And in terms of giving me something to fucking do with my goddamn life, and to stay with you, and to get to see you, and to get to spend time with you more than I would ever have even before, even in the normal times, and to get to know so many people better than I could have got to know you before. I'm the luckiest person. I'm the most ridiculously lucky person, and you are such a huge part of that, all of you. Thank you.
Have a drink.
I'm gonna have some margaritas.
Have a drink.
I'm gonna do. Great. Well, this is all fine. I feel fine about it. Yay, feeling.
Yay.
Okay.
Have some water.
Let's think about some terrible men. Is it terrible men time?
It's terrible men voting time, everybody. Everybody get your terrible men on. Okay. So for the second round of this tournament. We have first, from Feet of Clay, Dragon King of Arms. Secret dragon, not secret terrible snob, plotter and poisoner and Machiavellian oppressor of the poor. And he is going up against, from Matilda, Harry Worwood, who is a terrible father, treats his daughter like shit, rips up her books, throws them in the bin, is a cheat and a liar and has horrible taste in ties. If voting isn't already open, it should open now. And I'll give you a slow count down. Da 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 da. Boom. And voting is closed. Yay! Did it go smoothly? We'll only know. Yay, Katie's nodding. I'm so happy. Okay, right. We're on a roll. Next up, we have from Pride and Prejudice, Wickham. Charming, charismatic, manipulative liar who ruins women and dates friggin' 15-year-olds and tries to convince them to
write down the results.
I need to write down.
No, sorry. I can only create 3 polls at a time, so I need to delete the ones that I've got. So Nick needs to write down what the answers were. It's fine.
Okay.
So read these ones slower.
So I'll read these ones slower. Okay, so Wickham from Pride and Prejudice is up against the evil magician from The Golem and the Genie. What was his name? I can't remember. You know the one I mean. He had a horrible raspy voice that was murder on the Storyteller. And he killed that lovely woman. And he trapped the genie and was just a general nightmare. So voting for no. Okay, Katie's shaking her head at me, so I'm gonna stall. I'm gonna stall and vamp and maybe da 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 da. Can voting open yet? Voting can't open yet.
If we're stalling,
Yehuda Shaman. Yehuda Shaman. It was making me crazy. Sorry.
I am proceeding to commit the most individual crimes of any Storytime ever. I am. Unfortunately, it's all copyright breaking crimes of children's cello music, but it will be several dozen separate crimes by the end. Hopefully, the stalling is working. It's not that interesting, but it's lovely to be here. I miss you all.
It's magnificent stalling. It's perfect stalling.
Thank you.
It's exactly what I want it to be. Katie, do we need more stalling? Yes? No? We good? Great. Okay, fantastic. So voting is now open. Voting is now open on those 2 terrible men who were Wickham and the evil magician from The Golem and the Genie. So voting. Are you voting? Are you voting? Are you voting? Keep voting. Stop voting. The time for voting is past. Right. So now we have our next reading. And the next reading is going to be Bina. Bina has a poem for us, I believe.
Do, but I'm very indecisive. So would you like Liz Berry or A.A. Milne?
Liz Berry, please.
Although I'm going to warn you, I think this one made you cry the first time round. So.
Oh God.
You can see. I chose this one because I think it's the most popular one as measured by how many people bought the book immediately after this one. So, this one is called Stone. When you bought me a milk pan for Christmas, a woman at work said you were as romantic as a stone. Watching you that evening, I wondered what stone she had meant. A chip of car park gravel or something fancier, like the peridot in my mother's engagement ring. My interest in you became geological. Pulling on your Wellingtons to walk the dog in the rain, you were granite, durable, funereal almost. Under bathwater, you were the agate I found on Brighton Beach as a child, sleek and mottled as sealskin. At other times, you seemed a rarer gem, not emerald or topaz, nothing any other woman would wear at her throat, but plainer, more lovely, like the limestone walling caverns back home that purified the iron in blast furnaces, where keepers dripped jet from their beading brows. And a man like that would never choose a rose or a diamond ring. He'd stand for hours in a shop on the coldest day, testing the unfamiliar weight of a pan in his hand, assessing its metal, imagining how the milk would taste on my tongue as it poured, steaming from that perfect lip. Happy Storytime birthday.
Oh God, that's so howlingly romantic. Thank you, Peter. That was beautiful. Yeah, let's bury. Okay. Rolling immediately onward, we have the next round of the terrible Storytime man tournament. I'm keeping a watchful eye on Katie to see if she signals me. Yeah, we have a yes. Okay. Now, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a hard one. So for the first round, we have from the Night Circus, Hector Bowen, otherwise known as Prospero the Enchanter. He is a terrible father. I hope you're noticing a theme in Storytime Terrible Men. He calls her a slut. He sacrifices her, like risks her life to sacrifice it to win a game. He's a monster. Oh, blah. Remember when he cut open her fingertips and made her heal them and then did it again and she was like so young. Oh. Anyway, I'm not biased. No. And he is up against another terrible father figure. From the 10,000 Doors of January, it's Cornelius Locke, who keeps January as a sort of part of his collection and separates her from her father and is hella racist and manipulative and uses his evil, creepy, hypnotic powers for bad and wants to stamp out creativity and chaos in the world. He's a Tory, basically. So,
Republican.
Voting is now open. So you have 10 of these marching fingers to make up your mind. Which terrible father figure do you hate most? That is a hard one.
They have very similar.
It's close. It's very close.
No.
So close.
That was so close.
That was a diabolical pairing right there, Katie. Assuming you put these beside each other.
Yeah.
Well done.
Totally random.
So for the final heat of our first round, we have another corker from the Thursday Murder Club. Ian Ventham. Ian Ventham with his shiny red grand piano with its zebra skin piano stool and his horrible comments about women over 25 and his general disgusting this fucking guy-ness. Remember when he told Donna she was quite attractive for a police officer? He's dead and I'm glad. And up against Ian Ventham from Uprooted, we have Prince Marek, a horrible, spoiled, violent, weirdly obsessed with his mummy's boy, like casually abusive of women in positions of power below him, like uses his power to just totally go to war with an entire kingdom for personal reasons. He's an asshole. Who wore it worst?
Which book was he from? I don't remember him.
He's
Uprooted.
Uprooted. He was the a-hole in Uprooted, who got a bunch of people killed trying to rescue his creepy haunted mummy from a tree. So voting is now open. You have
Oh my god, it's 50-50. Oh no, oh no. Ian. Ian.
It's very Brexit. It's very Brexit.
Because you've got a lot of people killed.
Stop voting! Stop voting! Ooh.
That was also incredibly close.
Okay, so now, after we have had that first round, we are going to go on to our next reading, which is Duncan. Is Duncan here? Duncan, are you here, sweetness? Duncan, are you here? Speak to us, Duncan. Duncan is.
Sorry, I have technical difficulties. Can I delay by a few minutes?
That is absolutely fine. You can go for the next round. So Tabby, sweetheart, I think you have a short story.
Yeah. So it's from this book, The Never-Ending Story, from Michael Ende, but I also have it in English. And it's one bit, and I thought of you, Frankie, in this year. So I'm reading it. It came to Bastian that he had been staring the whole time at the book that Mr. Coriander had been holding, and that was now lying on the armchair. He couldn't take his eyes off it. It seemed to have a kind of magnetic power that attracted him irresistibly. He went over to the chair, slowly held out his hand, and touched the book. In that moment, sorry, my chair's rather creaky. In that moment, something inside him went click. As though a trap had shut, Bastian had a vague feeling that touching the book had started something irrevocable, which would now take its course. He picked up the book and examined it from all sides. It was bound in copper-colored silk that shimmered when he moved it about. Leafing through the pages, he saw the book was printed in 2 colors. There seemed to be no pictures, but there were large, beautiful capital letters at the beginning of the chapters. Examining the binding more closely, he discovered 2 snakes on it, one light, one dark. They were biting each other's tails, so forming an oval, and inside the oval, in strangely intricate letters, he saw the title, The Never-Ending Story. Human passions have mysterious ways, and children as well as grown-ups. Those affected by them can't explain them, and those who haven't known them have no understanding of them at all. Some people risk their lives to conquer a mountain peak. No one, not even themselves, can really explain why. Others ruin themselves trying to win the heart of a certain person who wants nothing to do with them. Still, others are destroyed by their devotion to the pleasures of the table. Some are so bent on winning a game of chance that they lose everything they own, and some sacrifice everything for a dream that can never come true. Some think their only hope of happiness lies in being somewhere else and spend their whole lives traveling from place to place, and some find no rest until they have become powerful. In short, there are as many different passions as there are people. Bastian Balthasar Buch's passion was books.
If you have never spent a whole afternoon with burning ears and rumpled hair, forgetting the world around you over a book, forgetting cold and hunger, if you have never read secretly under the bedcloth with a flashlight because your father or mother or some other well-meaning person has switched off the lamp, plausible grounds that it was time to sleep because you had to get up so early. If you have never wept bitter tears because a wonderful story has come to an end and you must take your leave of the character with whom you have shared so many adventures, whom you have loved and admired, for whom you have hoped and feared, and without whose company life seems empty and meaningless. If such things have not been part of your own experience, you probably won't understand what Bastian did next. Staring at the title of the book, he turned hot and cold, cold and hot. Here was just what he had dreamed of, what he had longed for. Ever since the passion for books had taken hold of him, a story never ended. The book of books.
Okay, 1, that was so lovely. 2, you read so beautifully. You are such a good reader and you've got such a lovely voice. That was fucking gorgeous.
I heard my voice trembling in the beginning, but I love this book. I've read it so many times.
That was really, really freaking nice. If you ever want to do like guest storytelling appearances, hit me up. That was so lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love that book. If you ever want to read us that book, I wouldn't complain if Frankie wants a week off and you have the time and energy, but also do not feel at all obligated to do that ever because it takes time and energy.
Lyric. Like, that sounds fucking incredible. Okay. So we're back on with the Terrible Men. So we can take it a little more gradually. We can take it one match at a time now. Shit's getting serious. So for the first match, quarterfinals, we have the genie from 1,000 Nights, he of the murder of 3,000 wives, versus Francis Renaud from Chocolat, he of the setting fire to travelers' boats and persecuting women who are out of the ordinary. So that is your match. Voting is now open. And I'm going to give you a slow, but not insanely slow 10 to make up your mind. Are you sure though? You sure? That other guy's terrible. Oh yeah, no, maybe. Oh no, maybe you were right the first time. Yeah, stick with your first. Oh no, it's too late. Too late to change your mind. Voting's closed. So now we have our next reading, or I think we possibly do if Duncan has ironed out his technical snafus. Duncan.
Now, I've got my reading on a tablet that won't start up.
Oh, sweet pea. Tell you what, if after this one you like it's just not working, that is fine. We will maybe do it in the after chat.
Okay.
For now, Jen, would you be able to read your poem?
Sure. So this is called Moonchild by Sue Hardy Dawson. And this is a lovely one that makes me think of you keeping us all bringing magic to our own homes. In the darkness, while you sleep, across the sky, Moonchild creeps, across the galaxy of dreams, collecting magic wishing beams. And where a child sleeps below, he drops a tiny bean to grow. On the countryside or town, cozy cottage, sleepy farm. Where the roads and houses meet, on tenements, city streets, in the street lamps' soft red glow, where only magic beans will grow. Grey savannas and dry plains, on caravans, midnight trains, under leaves of forest trees, tropical islands out to sea. On roaring boats, ocean liners, narrow barges junked in China, beyond the brown river's flow, where only magic beans will grow. In houses built on wooden stilts, tents of canvas, hide or silk, on shanty shacks made from clay, under thatch or grey blue slates. On the banks of muddy creeks, high on icy mountain peaks, underneath the ice and snow, where only magic beans will grow. Travelling the desert sands, jungle huts in distant lands, under roofs beneath the stars, coming home by plane or car. Here to stay or passing by, under the ground, way up high, tower block and bungalow, where only magic beans will grow. And through the night so dark and deep, across the sky moonchild creeps, dropping magic wishing beans to fill your head with magic dreams.
Hooray.
That was so lovely. Thank you, Jeff. Very gorgeous. Okay, so back on to the terrible men, and things are truly heating up. So in our next heat, we have Harry Wormwood, terrible father of Matilda, versus the evil magician from The Golem and the Genie, centuries old, malevolent magic user who murdered that girl that time. So, who do we hate most? Voting is now open. I'll be interested to see where this one goes, actually.
Well, there's so much competition at the moment.
They're two very different kinds of evil.
Yeah. This is very interesting to me. I'm just going to pause here for a moment. This is all very interesting to me because I can't see any of this voting. So I have
Where is
no
the voting
clue.
happening for those of us who are late and behind on life?
Oh, it's Liz.
Hi, thanks.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. Hello.
There are clearly two categories of evil man. There is like the cosmically evil man who does these great, enormous sort of crimes against humanity, and then there's like the personally evil man who is, mean in a.
You've got to ask yourselves. This is what you've got to ask yourselves. Now, Duncan, do you have your tablet live? If not, that's fine. We will go on to the final match of the tournament.
Unfortunately not. I'm trying to get the backup back, but I do want to know this.
No problem, sweetheart. Instead, lean in close to the camera and tell us you love us.
I love absolutely every single one of you. So very, very, very much.
We love you too.
Thank you, Duncan. That was so lovely.
And now, after that beautiful and heartfelt and spontaneous reading from Duncan, we have our final match before we go on to the final, which you're going to have to wait for because we're going to do that after the story. Yeah. Because you know how much I like delayed. Oh no, what a nightmare. So for this match, we have Cornelius Locke of the 10,000 Doors of January, creepy, pale-eyed manipulator and straightener out of things that should be agreeably wobbly, versus Prince Marek of Uprooted, useless fucking entitled shitty mama's boy who doesn't know when to leave a haunted tree well enough alone. Voting is now open. And voting is starting to close. Starting to close like that creepy tree around that creepy lady. Man, remember Uprooted?
That was great, but
What the fuck? That was a long time ago.
Oh, that was so good though.
It was my first, and I think still my favourite.
Mine too.
Did I tell you that my dad randomly recommended Uprooted to me?
No. Yeah, cool. Storytime is getting everywhere. That's the
Your dad has good taste.
Of Storytime. Your dad does have good taste. Now, everybody. Now, before we get into it with the final, y'all are going to have to wait for a really freaking long time because I'm about to read you a long ass story about a snail. So, tell you what, let's have a 1 minute comfort break. If anyone wants to like top up their drink or nut to the loo before the story begins, the time is now to do that. And if anyone wants to, talk among themselves, that is also chill.
So am I right in thinking there's a final round to go between, yes, but by God, what is this? Corporal Strappy enters the ring with a steel chair! Oh, Lord!
No! Rory threw a wild card into the mix in the form of Corporal Strappy, which I'm disallowing for reasons of it being chaotic and
just because it's his birthday.
Just because it's your birthday. Oh, it is his birthday. I probably
liable
should.
to spread despondency and alarm.
Story's going to take about an hour, sweetheart.
An hour?
An hour, yes. And I think we have had a minute's break now.
I'm going to say bye, everyone. It's nearly an hour here, so I'd rather save the story for the catch-up rather than listen to it.
I
love you a lot, Frankie.
I love you too.
I've got to go as well. I love this story though, and we'll watch the original on YouTube, I think, tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Remind myself.
Good
Bye,
night.
everyone.
Good night, love. To kill some time before my box gets back. Can I say, like, subjectively, Wickham is worse than Mr. Collins, but also Mr. Collins is the worst, and I petition that we include him.
Oh my God. I'll think about it. Maybe this we can discuss. Maybe we can have an unofficial match in the after chat of Strappy and Collins tag teaming whoever is the official winner. How does that sound? Terrible.
Can we theatrically recreate it?
Yes, I'm here for that. Right, everybody, I really am going to start now, otherwise we are going to be going on until 500 o'clock in the morning. So I am going to mute you all, and I'm going to get this story open. I'm really excited to read this to you again. I had such a wonderful time writing this during early lockdown. And it was definitely high key inspired by Storytime and all of the lovely kind of wholesome supportive stuff that was going on there. Y'all were just being really good friends for each other, and that was really lovely. And I think that kind of created a proper positive mental space for me to write probably the most wholesome thing I've ever written. So I'm really excited to read it for you again. Now, my darlings, my story timers with an entire year of story time under your belts, are you sitting comfortably? And I'll begin. The Snail. Once upon a time, there was a snail who was a house painter. Now, I know how that sounds, but it's true. He was a master at it.
He was one of the most hotly demanded house painters in the business. In fact, he wasn't just a house painter. He was an artist. Of course, he didn't start as an artist. No artist does. He got his first painting gig as part of a house painting team, and they were the best in the business. They had been the best in the business even before the Snail joined their ranks, and once he came on board, they were unstoppable. The Elephant was the founder of the team, and she was still the heart and head of the business. She had originally been a sole trader, painting houses on her own all over the community. She would take a large, deliberate trunkful of paint from one of the 2 buckets she carried slung over her back, take careful aim, and then release a powerful, colourful jet of paint with the force of a fireman's hose all over the wall. It was a very efficient method, and the Elephant could paint an entire house in a few short hours. She was a sweet, neurotic animal and scrupulously fair in her estimates, so word spread quickly and demand for her services rose. This made the Elephant very happy, but it also worried her. She knew that the one problem with her technique was that it was not very neat. Her method worked because she got the paint everywhere, but, on the other hand, the paint got everywhere. As requests for house painting began to pour in from fancier and fancier residences, with manicured lawns and balconies and bay windows, she knew that she would need to find a way to adapt her approach. She went out and bought 5 pints of Ben & Jerry's peanut buttercup ice cream, and she lined them all up in front of her and opened the lids, and she began to eat from left to right. This was how she always tackled any problems that needed serious thinking about, and it had never failed her yet. About halfway through the second tub, she thought, my success as a house painter is based on my unique method. That is what my business is founded upon. Rather than changing my method to suit the houses, wouldn't it be better to change the houses to suit my method? This seemed like a promising train of thought, so she pursued it through the rest of the second tub and most of the third. At the beginning of the fourth tub, she thought, what they want me to do is paint the walls, but not the windows or the doors or the flower beds or the roof. What I need to do is to cover up the windows and the doors and the flower beds and the roof, and then I can paint the whole lot as usual and not have to worry about being neat. But how? My trunk is perfect for blowing paint, but not good at masking off architectural features. I would need someone to help me. She ate a few more scoops of ice cream, pensively crunching the peanut chunks. But if I'm going to need someone to help me, why not get someone who can do the whole job? Someone more nimble and dexterous than me, someone good at climbing, who could do with steady work. She upended the last melted drops of ice cream from the fourth tub into her mouth, wiped her trunk, and reached for her phone to call a chimpanzee she'd met in art school. It took a while for the chimp to pick up, but when he did, he was delighted to hear from her. They'd always been good friends, though they hadn't spoken in a year or two. The chimpanzee was quite high, and it took a while for him to get the gist of what the elephant was proposing, but she explained patiently, and the message got through eventually. The chimp told her cheerfully that she was a sellout trying to trap him into bourgeois wage slavery and that he would never betray his art. The elephant agreed and told him the next job was on Thursday. Cool, said the chimp. And by the time the elephant had finished the fifth tub of ice cream and put the phone down, she had a prep guy. Within a week, the elephant knew that her 5-pint technique had worked wonders again. She and the chimpanzee quickly worked out their system. He would arrive at a job in the morning and mask off the windows, doors, and any other parts of the house that didn't want painting. He would lay tarpaulins over the roof and dust sheets on the ground all around the house, and then he would wander away and find a patch of sun to snooze in. The elephant would arrive with her paint buckets, paint all the walls with her usual quick efficiency, And then they would sit and crack open a beer together and argue amiably about postmodernism while the paint dried. Then the elephant would help the chimp unmask the house and take down the paint-spattered tarpaulins. The chimpanzee was always late and sometimes still a little stoned, but he worked hard and had no problems with taking the elephant's instructions. Business boomed. Emboldened by the success of her first foray into recruitment, it wasn't long before the elephant started thinking again about new ways to expand the business. The part of the job that took the longest was definitely the covering of the roof with the tarpaulins. The chimpanzee never complained, but as the jobs and the houses got larger and the number of windows and doors that needed covering increased, the elephant began to wonder if there was a way to do away with the task of tarping the roof altogether. The experience of running a startup must have been developing the elephant's problem-solving capabilities, because it only took 3 tubs of Ben & Jerry's peanut buttercup ice cream for her to come up with her answer. Now, in the small world of professional home improvements, everyone knows everybody else. At a networking event for female entrepreneurs several months previously, the elephant had met a zebra who ran a 2-man band window washing concern in the area, employing a giraffe on a part-time basis to help with the upper windows. Now, the elephant had heard on the grapevine that the zebra was thinking of winding up the business and taking a computer science qualification at the local college. So she ate a little more ice cream to give herself courage, flapped her ears nervously, and got in touch with the zebra to see if she'd be prepared to set up an introduction between the elephant and the giraffe. The zebra was perfectly happy to do so, and the next day the elephant had a brief but cordial chat with the giraffe that ended in her offering him a job opportunity with her team, an offer that the giraffe accepted with a slight stiffness that didn't conceal his obvious relief. He was an early retiree who lived alone, and who had taken the window washing job more for some occupation and company than for anything else. The elephant was at first a little intimidated by his stern manner and his habit of raising his chin and peering sideways down at whoever was speaking to him. But although gruff and slightly old-fashioned, he was good-hearted and touchingly grateful to be part of a team once more. With the giraffe on board, the chimpanzee no longer needed to cover the roofs of the houses they painted. The elephant would simply aim her jets of paint a little lower so that they didn't reach all the way to the top of the wall, and while she worked her way around the house, the giraffe followed behind her. He would hold the handle of the brush in his tough, mobile mouth and sweep it slowly and deliberately from side to side in firm, methodical strokes, painting in the gap that was left between the newly painted area and the eaves. Once the elephant had finished her part of the job, she would come and stand next to him before she went to join the chimpanzee on break, looking along the neat, even line below the roof's overhang. "Nice work," she would say. The giraffe would mutter and disclaim that he had never been artistic, looking at his careful work with pride. He could never be prevailed upon to join the elephant and the chimp in their beers, but he began to bring along a flask of hot, sweet tea, and would often nod off in the sun while they bickered happily to and fro. The addition of the giraffe to the team meant that there were practically no houses they couldn't paint. Over the next few months, the business went from strength to strength. They painted bijou cottages and smart townhouses and low, wide bungalows. One week they painted a single house in the middle of a terrace, which the chimpanzee carefully masked off from the houses on either side. And the next week received a collective request from all the other residents of the terrace to come back and paint all of their houses in different colours too. They painted kennels and caravans and hutches. They painted wasps' nests and termite mounds, and once the inside of a large, echoing cave. It was when they were painting the outside of a small municipal multi-storey car park that they met the snail. He was working as an independent contractor at the time, repainting the lines between the parking spaces that had got worn and faded. He had a small wheeled hopper which attached to his shell with suction cups, and which released a slow stream of paint behind him as he trailed along. It was slow work, but he was good at it. He had a gift for the linear, and the lines he painted were always as straight as arrows, without curve or wobble anywhere along their length. It was the chimpanzee who first noticed him. There wasn't much for the chimp to do on this job. He had masked off the door to the manager's office, and the fire exit door, and the big sign by the entrance displaying the opening hours and ticket prices, and that was about it. The elephant had insisted it was too early to start on the beer, and there was no grass outside to snooze on, so he had come for a wander around inside. Seeing the snail at work, he perched himself on a nearby railing to watch him. After a while, he said, with genuine appreciation, "Nice, man." The snail looked up, startled but pleased. "Thanks." The chimp swung back and forth a few times, then hopped down and came closer. "Real clean lines. Minimalist, yeah? Some good Mondrian shit." The snail flushed. "They're just straight lines." "They're so straight, dude," the chimp insisted. "They're like platonically straight, you know?" The snail didn't know, but he was pleased by the obvious enthusiasm from a member of such a well-renowned team. The chimp regarded his work for a moment longer, then loped over to the low wall of the car park and stuck his head out. "Yo, L, G-Man, come look at this." Before the snail knew what was happening, the elephant and the giraffe were peering in at him from outside. He shrank back a little inside his shell, but the chimp was already enthusiastically pointing out his painting to the other two. "Check out these lines, man," he was saying. "This little dude is doing some real sick line work in here." The elephant and the giraffe peered closer, and they both admired the beautiful straightness and simplicity of the snail's lines. "A talent, sir," said the giraffe, peering sternly sideways down at the snail. "I myself have never been artistic, but I know talent when I see it. There is nothing so beautiful as a clean, straight line, no sir. Bravo, top-notch work." The snail blushed all along his length and shuffled his foot. The elephant smiled at him. "They're right, you know. That's a real skill you've got there. I could never paint anything half so neat." She looked at the long row of sharp, careful lines and at the wheeled hopper attached to the snail's shell. She hadn't had even one tub of Ben & Jerry's peanut buttercup ice cream, but nevertheless she felt an idea begin to form in her mind. "Hey, are you due a break at all?" The snail, still feeling shy but encouraged by her kind manner, nodded. "You want to join us for a beer?" asked the elephant. And so the snail found himself sitting in the shade of a parked van, sipping beer from an upturned bottle cap with the best house painting team on the scene. He felt a little overwhelmed at first, but the relaxed, friendly atmosphere of the group soon put him at his ease, and soon he felt as though he'd known them for ages. When the break was over and the others went to begin finishing up, the elephant hung back. "Listen," she said, "how would you feel about coming to work with us?" The snail choked on his last mouthful of beer. The elephant patted him on the shell as delicately as she could with the tip of her trunk, and while he coughed, she went on. "I know this is pretty out of the blue, and it would be a bit of a shift for you career-wise. If you don't fancy it, that's completely fine. But I meant what I said. You've got a real skill, and I think we could use that kind of skill on the team. We can paint any house, any colour, and do a great job of it. But with your help, we could offer a level of detail that I think some of our bigger customers in particular would love. She flapped her ears and smiled a little nervously. No need to decide now, obviously, but just have a think. I'd love to, said the snail hoarsely, his eyes still watering a little. That sounds... I'd love to. The elephant beamed. And so it was that the snail joined this team of elite house painters as their official lineman, painting straight, precise lines in complementary shades along the edges of window frames and cornicing and around moulded features. Since his wheeled hopper wouldn't work on vertical surfaces, the chimpanzee would dip his foot in the paint and place him carefully on the wall, where he would slowly and steadily work his way along. Initially, he would be taken off and re-dipped into the paint every so often, but they discovered it was more efficient as well as pleasanter for him to simply eat some of the dry powdered paint. The elephant had checked and triple-checked that it was non-toxic, and she still fretted about the idea until after several jobs had gone by with no ill effects, which then altered the colour of the trail he left behind him. It wasn't long before the elephant was proved right in her prediction. The touch of extra detail that his service provided was very popular, and the business became so successful that the elephant had to hire an accountant, an ant named Rodney, who filed their tax returns and took care of the back offices, so the elephant could concentrate on painting full-time. The snail was happier than he'd ever been. He'd taken pride in doing a good job on his car parks, but the work had been repetitive and unfulfilling. He'd never thought of himself as an artist, but the variety and interest that this new task brought to him, as well as the unfailing encouragement and enthusiasm of the others, began to open new vistas inside him. He began to observe and understand the lines of his own making, not only as individual units, but as a complete whole. This door frame wasn't simply a case of two long lines and one short one. The lines were connected, meeting like old friends on a street corner. The beauty of their angle somehow formed by and yet separate from the different beauty of their straightness. This row of windows, each one a tall rectangle, was both a collection of parts and a whole, a triptych of identical shapes that were somehow both the same as and distinct from one another, each understandable both as a mirror and copy of the one beside it, and as a unique entity, defined not by its form, but by its location in space. These were strange new ideas for the snail, and he wasn't entirely certain what he meant by them. He tried tentatively to express some of his thoughts to the chimpanzee one day when he came to move the snail from a completed cornice to the edge of a large window box. The chimp began talking about form and mimesis and Andy Warhol and geometric abstraction, and made a lot of energetic gestures with the hand holding the snail, until the snail started to feel both very confused and a bit sick, and had to ask to be put down. But for all he didn't understand a lot of what the elephant and the chimpanzee talked about during their afternoon beer breaks, the snail could feel something within himself shifting and expanding, his mind filling with vague new conceptions and feelings that slowly developed into a strange and undefined yearning. He still loved his work and had developed an appreciation for line and curve and angle that glowed in fascinating shapes inside his head. But these shapes were still set for him, his work constrained by the edges and frames and features of the houses they painted. The snail felt that wings were growing inside his shell, tightly furled, and he longed for a chance to stretch them and take flight, to create fascinating shapes of his own. Little did the snail know that his artistic breakthrough was about to come. It came, in fact, as so many breakthroughs do, entirely by accident. They were working a big job, a large and architecturally ambitious house on the outskirts of town. The architect seemed to have chosen to combine an entire house's worth of windows into a single feature, and the building was composed on 3 sides of smooth blank concrete walls, with a front erupting into an extravagant concoction of swooping glass that reached from the ground right up to the back-sloping roof. The chimpanzee had sworn colourfully and at length when he saw it, and it had taken 3 times as long to mask off all the irregularly shaped panes as it had to paint the whole building. The elephant and the giraffe were soon done, and sat down cheerfully with the chimpanzee to wait for the snail to finish. His task was also an unusually simple one that day. Apart from the front door, which he had dutifully outlined in a bright cobalt blue, the team had recently switched their powdered paint supplier to a new brand, and it was the snail's first time using this particular shade. There was only the long, straight line running along the edge of the roof for him to do. It wasn't a complex line, but it was a long one. The house was very large, and by the time the elephant and giraffe had finished the 3rd wall and come to join the chimp in the sun, the snail had only just disappeared around the corner of the 1st. The rest of the team lay back at their ease on the white speckled dust sheets, chatting and heaping good-natured abuse on the vision of the unknown architect. Oh, hold on, I'm just going to mute you all. The shadow of the tree behind them moved gradually across the ground, and they began to place idle bets on the point it would have reached when the snail emerged around the other corner of the roof. The elephant frowned. He has been gone a while, actually, hasn't he? I know it's a big house, but I wouldn't have thought it would take him this long. Well, it's very warm, you know, remarked the giraffe languidly, tilting the last drops of tea onto his long black tongue. Awfully warm. Slow going on a warm day like this, what? I hadn't thought about that. I hope he's okay in this heat. The chimp waved an empty beer bottle at her. He'll be fine. He's got his own little house right there, man. Maybe he went in for a nap. The elephant got to her feet. I'm going to go check on him, just to make sure. The elephant, by Jove, I hope the little fellow hasn't got sunstroke, said the giraffe, heaving himself to his feet as well. The chimp groaned, but got up too, and the 3 of them followed the neat, straight line of cobalt blue around to the back of the house. The elephant gasped. The giraffe dropped his thermos flask. The chimpanzee said, "Whoa." The snail was feeling very peculiar. He wasn't quite sure when it had begun. He'd been fine earlier. He remembered painting around the door, and then the chimp bringing him a covert sip of beer and a fresh meal of paint powder before he began the big job. He'd been wilting a little in the heat, but the beer had perked him back up, and he'd set off briskly along the edge of the roof. But that seemed as though it had been a long time ago, perhaps several years ago, or sometime in his early childhood. He told himself it only seemed that way because the roof was so long, but he didn't remember it being this long, or being such a peculiar shape. He'd thought it was a simple straight edge, but actually it was full of dips and angles and complicated pointy bits. No wonder it was taking him so long. He thought that he might have been lonely, trekking on this strange path for so many centuries. But fortunately, there was another snail there with him, a huge black snail that trailed away just in front of him, its shell stretching and lengthening oddly. He hurried to try and catch up with it, but it quickened its pace too and stayed just ahead of him, and together they pressed on along the spiralling edge of the roof that bent gently to the left in an endless but gradually tightening curve, so that the snail expected at any moment to come up on himself again from behind. At least then this black snail would have to stop, he thought. Certainly has some stamina on it. The line it's painting is so perfectly straight. Wonder if the elephant would let it join the team? Someone was picking him up and laying him gently on a cool patch of grass. "Give him some beer," he heard a voice saying from very far away. "Don't give him beer," snapped another voice, one he was sure he recognised. "Honestly, look at him. It must have been that new blue. He's completely out of it. The last thing he needs now is beer." "No, seriously," insisted the first voice, which the snail now thought might belong to a chimpanzee. "I've been there, man. It's a whole trip. He needs a beer. It does something with, like, enzymes. Wash that shit out of his system, yeah? He probably should drink something, you know. I'm afraid I haven't any tea left, or we could give the poor little chap..." There was a wash of cool air across the snail's face, as if someone was fanning him gently with her ears. He peered up blearily at the elephant. "Beer?" 3 huge faces looked down at him, 2 worried, 1 interested. The elephant bit her lip. "Oh, all right then." The chimp held a capful of beer gently to the snail's mouth, and he slurped it eagerly as the world began to come back into focus. "Are you all right?" asked the elephant, her voice full of concern. The snail was feeling much better now, and told her so. "What did you see, man?" said the chimp eagerly, leaning close. "Where did it take you?" The snail gazed up at him, perplexed. He didn't understand. He hadn't gone anywhere, only along the edge of the roof, like always. "No, dude." Ignoring the elephant's shushing, the chimpanzee picked the snail up and sat him on one leathery palm to look back at the blank white wall of the house. "You went deep." The wall stretched wide and blinding in the late sun. But it wasn't blank anymore. It was covered in blue lines, winding and zigzagging and stretching back and forth and up and down and along. There were a series of perfect squares, tilted and offset from one another like a stack of boxes captured in the midst of falling. There was a patch of overlapping loops and swirls that looked like a riverbed of smooth pebbles seen through clean water. There was a spiky, irregular, pendulous shape, like the chrysalis of some fantastical caterpillar, all linked together, all formed in one smooth, uninterrupted line of bright cobalt blue, as if drawn by a fountain pen. The line finished in the very centre of the wall, in a round, flawlessly symmetrical circle that looked a little thicker and darker than the rest of the lines, as if the fountain pen had drawn it over and over again. "Did I do that?" asked the snail, appalled. "That's magnificent," interrupted the giraffe. "I myself have never been artistic, as you know, but even I can see that this is a great work. Yes, a great work, sir." The chimp nodded enthusiastically. "It's wild, man. Totally wild. Visionary, you know. Francis Bacon vibes." The snail looked at the wall again, unable to believe that he had produced the towering, profound shapes and forms that seemed to tell a story in a language he was just on the cusp of understanding. He felt a bubble of pride begin to form in his chest. Then he looked up quickly at the elephant. "But the owner, it's not what they wanted. They might not... We should paint over it." He trailed off. The elephant was gazing at the wall too, frowning. Then she looked down at him. "Let's wait and see what they say. You're right, it's not what they asked for, and they might not want their house to look like this. She smiled at the snail. But we should at least give them the option of keeping the first masterpiece of an emerging artistic talent. The snail blinked his bloodshot eyes very rapidly and ducked shyly back into his shell. In the end, he needn't have worried. The owner of the house, a large badger who spent most of her late husband's money on patronising the arts, went into transports of delight when the elephant led her nervously around the back of her house. Clasping her shovel-like paws to her hairy bosom, she gushed over the primal symbolism and talismanic energy of the piece. "Like the NASCAR lines, darling," she exclaimed, her silk turban slightly askew. "Like the Uffington horse." "All her bougie friends are going to want one now," whispered the chimp as they trudged down the long drive, laden with folded dust sheets. "You watch, man. You'll be chewing so much blue your shell will glow." But at this, the elephant put her foot down. "No more of that blue," she said sternly, glaring at the chimp. "God knows what's in it, but it's clearly unsafe. I'll be having words with the supplier. Their standards of what counts as non-toxic are far too—" "I don't think I need the blue," said the snail shyly. He could feel the wings inside him beating strong and steady, and his mind was a whirl of shapes lighting up the dark. I think I can do it on my own." "Of course you can," said the elephant gently. As it turns out, they were all right. The badger immediately threw a soiree for 30 or 40 of her most intimate friends to show off her new artwork, and before the night was over, several of them had sneaked off into the bushes to phone the elephant and request the Times house painting services at the first possible opportunity. Within a week, the elephant had had to stop accepting jobs for the time being as their diary was so packed, and Rodney the ant was putting in overtime just to keep up with the invoicing. The snail's confidence grew and grew. His belief in himself as an artist, faint and wavering to begin with, glowed and kindled with each new job into a strong, bright flame that burned joyfully within him. The team's first commission for a snail original work was for a beaver who worked in the city, who wanted his sprawling country dam freshened up with a new coat of paint. The beaver's son, a young person of bohemian tendencies, had been at the badger's party and very much admired her latest showpiece. And when he realised that his father had booked the same team, he demanded that the snail should be allowed absolutely free rein for his artistic vision. The father, who had no particular interest in art, said that as long as his free rein didn't take him outside the confines of the East Wing, the snail could do what he liked with his artistic vision. So the snail, very nervous but encouraged by his team and by the enthusiastic twitterings of the young beaver, gulped down a bowl of warm umber paint powder and sallied forth in a twining, winding, flowing path that wove around the logs of the dam like ribbons around a maypole, creating a subtle, rippling pattern like a flowing stream blended with a banded grain of wood. He felt that perhaps he should have included at least a few straight lines, since they were his stock in trade, but their neat, scrupulous precision didn't seem right for this job. He finished his final flourishing swoop with another perfect circle and looked anxiously to his patron for approval. The young beaver was even more delighted than the badger had been, burst into floods of praise, and finally, since he was not able to shake the snail's hand, seized the chimpanzee's paw and began enthusiastically wringing it. The next job was for an aging and imperious dowager peacock, whose summer house the snail decorated with neat bands of interlocking squares and hexagons in a shimmering purple, and who was so pleased with the result that she very nearly smiled. After that, it was a mural on the side of a local school. The elephant was firm that they would continue to work small and community jobs too, despite all the chimp's dark mutterings about becoming lackeys of the second estate. And after that, a windmill that had been converted into a co-living space for young professional squirrels. In each place, the team carried out the masking and painting as they always had, the snail still completing his usual line work around lintels and windowsills. Then, once all the walls were painted, once the canvas is prepared, as the giraffe insisted on putting it, the chimp would place the snail carefully in his desired starting spot, and the rest of the team would retire to a discreet distance to relax while he began to paint. They kept their chatter to a respectful volume, but within minutes the snail stopped hearing them anyway, swept away to that vast, luminous space where the lines spun themselves out into an endless kaleidoscope of possibilities. Inspired by his work on the beaver's dam, which had so reflected the harmony of wood and sunlit water that surrounded it, the snail began consciously adapting his ideas to each house they painted. Elements of its form and use made their way into the patterns and shapes he created, and often aspects of the owners themselves were represented, though always in an abstract way that probably none but the snail himself would recognise. It brought him great joy to feel that he was thus expressing not only his own creativity, but something of the unique personality of the houses and the lives lived in them. The genuine delight on their clients' faces when they saw their beloved homes transformed was all the reward the snail needed. As he told the elephant when she came to him, ears flapping nervously, and told him that if he wanted to pursue a solo artistic career, she would completely understand. "You're so talented," she said. "We do good work, I know we do, but we're in such high demand now, and that's all because of you. I don't want to start charging higher rates or only working for prestige customers, but I also don't want to hold you back. This could be your big break. So few artists get the chance for this kind of commercial success. I hope you know we wouldn't blame you at all if you wanted to start taking private commissions instead of carrying on painting houses with us." "I like painting houses," the snail assured her earnestly. "I'm really happy that people like what I'm doing, but I don't want to leave the team. You've already given me my big break. I love what we do, and I'm not interested in private commissions." The elephant flushed. "Thank you," she said, curling her trunk into a knot of embarrassed pleasure. "But actually, there was one private commission at least I was sort of hoping you'd take. I don't suppose you've got such a unique gift, and I really do love your work. Would you be at all interested in painting something for me on my house?" The snail blushed all along his whole body, and his eye stalks waved excitedly. "It would be an honour," he said. He flatly refused to accept any payment for the job, despite the elephant's insistence. "You're my friend," he told her. "If you like my work, let me give it to you as a present." "But," began the elephant, "if you try and add anything onto my paycheck, I'll get Rodney to transfer it straight back to you with interest," the snail said firmly. "Please." Reluctantly, the elephant conceded. "Okay, but I'm getting the beers in. Proper craft stuff." To this the snail agreed gladly, and the next Saturday the chimp called round to take him to the elephant's house. She lived in a large, half-converted barn on a quiet suburban street. There was a group of children kicking a football about in the middle of the road, who scattered as the chimp's ancient Vespa ploughed toward them, backfiring loudly. The elephant met them at the door, apologising for the jumble of tools and bricks in the garden. I've been in the middle of converting this place for about 4 years, and somehow I never seem to get any further on with it. And showed them around the back to a tall expanse of sturdy, weather-worn timber, with a single small window set high up in it like a porthole. I haven't put a paint base on because, well, the texture and the colour of the wood is so lovely, but do you think that would be all right for you to work on? I don't want you to get any splinters. The snail assured her that he would be just fine, and after gazing meditatively at the elephant's house for a while, he selected a simple white paint powder and asked the chimp to place him in the bottom right corner of the wall. He had been a bit worried about creating something not just for a job, but for a friend. What if she didn't like it? What if he couldn't think of anything to paint at all? But as soon as he felt the smooth, undulating surface of the wood beneath his foot, the lines leapt into life before him so strongly and vividly he felt he could almost see them, as if all he needed to do was follow where they led. The world receded, but this time he didn't ignore it completely. In the background, he could hear the hum and patter of the elephant's voice as she joked with the chimp, and her warm laughter purred around inside his shell like a little engine powering him along. The giraffe arrived halfway through the afternoon, hot and harried, muttering about trouble with his bus pass, but his explanation trailed off when he got to the back of the house. The warm, variegated planks shone chestnut and honey in between lines of solid white. A thick, blocky zigzag pattern ran right up the side of the wall, almost to the roof, then twisted at the top and spread back out and down in rounded, forking paths like the branches of a baobab tree. Each branching line was tipped with a small loop, often placed so that they framed a knot in the wood's grain, like a kind, dark eye bracketed with soft wrinkles. The last line was almost back at the base of the wall, but instead of looping it off, the snail had drawn it out into a long series of crisp, oblong shapes, all different sizes and dimensions, which projected up from the ground level like the skyline of some great city, as though all the houses the elephant had ever painted had come to stand together, side by side, beneath the sheltering embrace of the great tree. The giraffe swallowed rather hard, and for once accepted a beer from the chimp without comment. The snail finished the final oblong with a long, swirling curve like an artist's brushstroke, and completed it with the perfectly round circle that had become his trademark signature, just as the light was fading. The chimp set him down beside a small dipping bowl full of IPA, and then he and the elephant and the giraffe stood back and gazed at the snail's work. The elephant's eyes were full of tears. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. I love it." "A masterpiece," croaked the giraffe. "Truly a masterpiece, sir. I myself am not artistic, but even if I were, I could not hope to create such a work." Beside him, the chimp was nodding fervently, his half-drunk beer sloshing foam onto the ground. Paint spattered and elated, the snail looked up at their proud, beaming faces. His friends. "You know," he said, attempting diffidence, "if you guys ever wanted anything doing on your houses too." He had barely finished speaking before the giraffe and the chimpanzee were both hopping about excitedly, plainly thrilled at the idea. "Are you sure, dear boy?" asked the giraffe. "You don't have to, you know. A great artist—" "I want to," said the snail firmly. And so the very next weekend, the whole team assembled at the giraffe's neat bungalow, the echoing bangs of the chimp's vesper drawing scandalized looks over several privet hedges. Out of deference to the giraffe's tastes, they hadn't brought any beer with them. He made them all strong, sweet tea in chipped Jubilee mugs, with a willow-patterned saucerful for the snail, and took them into the back garden to show them his rose bushes. The elephant had brought along Rodney the ant this time too, and he perched on a sugar lump and peered at the warm, rosy brick of the garden wall.
Is this where you were thinking of, for the painting?
The giraffe nodded and harumphed and said that he had thought it might be a suitable spot, and the snail selected a soft, greyish-purple heather colour and set to work. He painted in a clockwise direction, up and along and down and back, building a neat, regular herringbone pattern of rectangles like a parquet floor along each side of the wall. Towards the centre, however, the blocks began to give out, as though the floorboards had been pulled up in a wide circle starting from the middle. Into this blank space, the snail painted a single straight line, which wavered a little and then began to undulate into curves. Larger and larger the curves became, and the line snaked back and forth around the inside of the circle until it met its own course again and began to spiral in towards the centre. The waves gradually diminished and flattened out as the spiral contracted, until finally the line completed itself quietly and naturally in the snail's perfect signature circle at the very centre of the wall. It was a clean, elegant design, but the painstaking execution of the herringbone pattern had taken a long time, and Rodney, the elephant, and the chimpanzee were all snoozing on the grass by the time the piece was finished. The giraffe had watched the entire process, however, rapt and absorbed, and when the last circle was complete, he burst into applause, startling the others awake and making Rodney topple off his sugar lump. "Bravo, sir!" cried the giraffe huskily, his voice quavering with emotion. "Once more, a masterpiece! Such artistry, such discernment! Why, even I can see it, though, as you know, I am, myself, not artistic," finished the chimp, grinning and poking the giraffe with a friendly elbow. "Real nice work, man. Rad use of space. Can't wait to see what you come up with for Mikasa." The chimp turned out to live in a tall, dilapidated townhouse on the grungy side of town, which he shared with 3 meerkats, a water buffalo, a heavily tattooed gorilla, a flock of colourful parakeets, and an elderly toucan. He hadn't asked any of his fellow residents for permission to paint the house, or in fact mentioned it to them at all, but seemed perfectly unconcerned. "It's cool, man. No rules, just rights. Freedom of artistic expression, yeah? It's not like anybody, actually owns the place." The snail felt slightly dubious about this part, even though the building had clearly been derelict for some years. The 2 meerkats eating leftover pizza at the kitchen table when they trooped in seemed perfectly amenable, though, and the gorilla was so taken with the idea that he abandoned his mixing bowl of hash brownie batter on the counter and came outside in his ratty pink apron to watch the snail work. "What colour would you like it?" asked the snail. He had asked the elephant to bring a variety of their brightest pigments, as he wasn't quite sure what would suit the chimp best. "What else? Green, dude." The chimp grinned and held up his paw to the elephant, who rolled her eyes and high-fived it with her trunk.
"What, as in money, you mean?" asked Rodney interestedly.
As the chimpanzee spluttered indignantly in the background, the snail loaded up on vivid emerald green powder the colour of jungle leaves after a rainfall and began to paint. The ground floor was already covered in old graffiti, layers of scribbles and tags crisscrossing and overlapping each other in a blurred jumble of lines like a faded star map. The snail trailed over them, following now this path, now that, moving from an indecipherable scrawl to part of an angular W to the curve of an inexpertly rendered flower, retracing the ancient lines into a new pattern that sprawled exuberantly from one side to the other. Then he started to climb. It was a bright, clear day, and the others had grouped themselves on the worn stone steps at the front of the house. At some point, the gorilla went back in and retrieved the hash brownie mixture, sucking the wooden spoon thoughtfully before passing the bowl around. The third meerkat, who had been passed out on a beanbag in the living room, woke up and brought out a deck and speakers, and high up on the wall the snail felt the bass thrumming through the brickwork. It was exhilarating, and he climbed higher and higher, making bubbles and hoops that wound around and through one another, breaking every now and then into long spikes that jutted energetically in every direction. The house was a tall one, and the spikes and bubbles became smaller as the snail moved upward, so that from the ground perspective the walls seemed to be stretching away infinitely into the wide sky. A final series of tiny loops led the snail up to the pointed apex of the gable, and for a moment he hesitated. The wall was finished, but it didn't seem quite right to stop just there. Feeling daring, he pressed on upward, crawling upside down, around and up the fascia, until he emerged on the very top of the roof itself. There, visible only from the air, he completed the line. Looking back down to the street below, he knew a moment of fright. He hadn't realised quite how high he had gone, and even the elephant was toy-sized from his dizzying perch. Then the exhilaration returned in a rush, and he laughed aloud, closing his eyes and tilting his face up to the sun as the chimp came swinging up the drainpipe to fetch him, whooping and hollering all the way. It was late when the party finally wound up. The elephant, giggling madly, escorted the old giraffe home. He had eaten several heaping portions of the brownie mixture without realising what was in it, and had spent much of the evening propped against a wall, blinking his eyes one at a time. And the chimp offered the snail a counter space to crash on. But the snail opted to camp outside, and sat on the railing gazing at his completed work as it glowed in the dim sodium light of the street lamp. He felt unaccountably melancholy. He was proud of this piece, just as proud as he'd been of the elephant's house and the giraffe's. He felt that he had captured something of his friends' characters and uniqueness, and he loved being able to make their homes reflect a little more of the beautiful spirit that lived inside them. But he couldn't help feeling a little sad. It seemed ironic that, of all the houses in the world, the only one he could never bring his creative vision to was his own. His little brown shell suddenly seemed drab and ordinary in comparison to the wild green jungle that rose before him, and he found he almost didn't want to be inside it. It was a long time before he went to bed. He was still quiet on Monday when the team met to go over the schedule for the coming week. As they left, Rodney fell back to walk beside him.
Hey, is everything all right?
The snail sighed. Yeah, I'm fine. Rodney nudged him gently.
You don't look fine. Come on, let's get a coffee.
The ant steered him toward the break room and produced 2 dark, aromatic coffee beans from the bottom cupboard.
We'll be bouncing off the walls for the rest of the day, but never mind. Now, spill.
Hesitantly, the snail began. He told Rodney all about the joy he felt creating something beautiful for his friends, and his growing sadness that his own home couldn't be part of his creative endeavours.
It feels even worse, he said in a small voice, because my house is with me wherever I go. It's not just where I live, it's a part of me, and I can't do anything to make it feel like it's truly mine.
He nibbled a bit more of his coffee bean.
I know that sounds silly.
Rodney was looking at him understandingly. "It's not silly," he said. "I know how you feel. I love my colony, but there I'm just 1 in 12,000, no different from anyone else. I want to be my own person. I even gave myself a name so I could feel like more of an individual. But who's going to call me by it when they can't even tell me apart from everyone else?" The snail felt a little guilty. He'd had no idea Rodney felt this way. He tried to think of something he could say to help. "I'm so sorry, Rodney. I know it's not the same, but if you wanted us to come round and paint your anthill, we could at least—" Rodney smiled. "It's okay. I doubt you'd be allowed anyway. It's all decision by committee round at ours. It'd be big trouble if you just turned up and started painting willy-nilly. Thanks for the offer, though." He patted the snail gently on the shell. "Hey, why don't you ask the others about your problem, though? I know they can't do the same thing you can, but they're all artists too. Even the giraffe in his way. I'm sure they'd be happy to help." The snail mused on Rodney's words for the rest of the morning. Maybe it was the effects of the coffee bean, but he definitely felt cheerier than he had before. And after they'd finished the day's job, repainting the clubhouse of a local otters association in their team colours, he took a deep breath and said, "Actually, there's something I wanted to ask you all about." The elephant, the giraffe, and the chimpanzee were full of sympathy, and all three of them were most eager to help. Even the giraffe, who was so bashful and muttered so many times that he was not artistic, that the snail insisted he be the first to contribute. The chimp draped a dust sheet over a length of guttering and placed the snail ceremoniously upon it. The giraffe selected his smallest paintbrush, dropping it twice in excitement. Finally, everything was ready. The snail took up his position, broadside on to the giraffe, who held the paintbrush in his mouth and swept it sideways, coating half of not only the snail's shell, but his body as well in a thick, wobbly layer of uneven paint. Said the giraffe, peering closely at the piebald snail. "Not my finest work, I'm afraid. These fiddly little brushes, you know." The snail, blinking paint out of his eye, agreed that it was definitely the fault of the brush. He looked back at his blodgy, dribbly shell. It was certainly not quite what he had hoped for. The chimp leaned in and examined him critically too. "You got some powerful textures there, man, but maybe need some figure work in there. Shape and form, right?" The snail nodded gratefully, feeling his heart lift. Shape and form, that was it exactly. The chimpanzee sat the snail on an upended brick like a pedestal. For 10 minutes he contemplated his canvas from all angles, leaning forward and back and squinting at him so intensely that the snail began to feel distinctly self-conscious. Finally, the chimp extended one paw to the side, without removing his gaze from the snail, and gestured dramatically to a jar of black paint. The giraffe pushed it respectfully towards him. The chimp dipped his forefinger into it, and with a look of ferocious concentration, made a single round black spot on the very top of the snail's shell. Then he sat back on his haunches with an air of satisfaction. "Surreal, dude." The snail looked back over his shoulder. It certainly was surreal. His shell looked like an imperfectly iced bun with a burnt cherry on top, or perhaps like an eye, staring unblinkingly up at the sky. It made him feel strange and not at all comfortable. A little desperate now, he looked up at the elephant. She was looking not at his shell, but at his face, and her expression was a little too understanding. "Perhaps something on a smaller scale," she said. Still abstract, but with more complexity of line. I wonder. She scratched under her chin thoughtfully, and then dipped her trunk into a tub of vibrant magenta paint. Now, hold very still, she warned, moving closer, and the snail crouched as still as he possibly could as she carefully and precisely lowered the very tip of her trunk down directly over his shell. He felt a light tickling, scratching sensation all over and realized what she was doing. The short, bristly hairs on the inside of her sensitive trunk were covered in paint, and as she very slowly rotated it, they were leaving thin, wiggly lines all over him. Excitement leapt inside him. Then, without warning, the elephant let rip the most enormous sneeze, her ears flapping violently and her trunk stretching and compressing like a squeeze box. The snail, the brick, and the ground around it were completely doused in a jet of magenta, and he gasped and coughed, his vision swimming. "I'm so sorry," wailed the elephant, swiping her streaming eyes with her trunk and leaving a smear of pink across her cheek. "It's just too too ticklish." "That's okay," said the poor snail with a brave attempt at a smile. "Thanks. I think I'll just, go and get cleared up." And he trailed dolefully away, his eye stalks drooping sadly, and didn't see the worried looks exchanged behind him. The snail washed himself clean under the overflow pipe behind the office, twisting and rubbing against the gravel until his skin stung and his shell was plain and brown once more. Then he wandered on, meandering miserably down the street, the weight of his disappointment pressing upon him as though his shell were filled with lead. He wasn't heading anywhere in particular, and it was only when several ants scampered briskly past him that he realized he was right next to the colony where Rodney lived. He came to a stop. There were long streams of ants pouring industriously in and out of the anthill, some giving him hurried nods of greeting, others tramping past without looking up, deep in conversation. But the snail was dismayed to realize that he had no idea whether or not Rodney was among them. The teeming ants really did all look the same. What kind of person was he wondered unhappily, if he couldn't even recognize his friend in a crowd of strangers? But then he heard a shout and looked up to see Rodney hurrying toward him, waving his antenna in greeting. Rodney took one look at the snail's face and led him without a word to a quiet bench away from the crowds. They sat down, and for a while neither of them said anything. "Do you want to talk about it?" asked Rodney eventually. To their mutual horror, the snail felt his eyes begin to water. It just didn't work," he sniffed, and burst into tears. He cried for several minutes, all the bitterness of his disappointment suddenly welling out of him. Rodney sat beside him in silence, and then, as the flood ebbed, handed him a leaf to blow his nose on. Are you okay?" asked the ant tentatively. The snail gave him a watery smile. "I'm fine. I think I'll just go to bed. Thanks, Rodney. And sorry." "You don't," began Rodney, but the snail had already retreated miserably back inside his shell. After a while, he heard Rodney leave, but he didn't go to sleep. He lay awake long into the night, listening to the rain pattering on his shell. At some point, he must have drifted off into a restless doze, because he was woken by the sound of voices outside. He lay listlessly for a few moments, letting the noises wash over him, and then with a start he recognized the voices of the rest of the team. He bit his lip. Oh, dear me. He bit his lip, feeling worse than ever. He was still miserable, but to his misery was now added the gnawing of guilt. He knew his friends had tried to help him as best they could, and he felt ashamed to be so ungrateful for their efforts. He didn't want to see their hurt, disappointed faces, and for a wild moment he wondered if he could back quietly away without putting his head out of his shell. But that would be even worse, and so he took a deep breath and emerged slowly, one eye stalk at a time, into the crisp light of the morning. He blinked. The elephant, the giraffe, and the chimpanzee were sitting on the ground under a tree opposite, sipping from takeaway coffee cups and bickering over a paper bag of croissants. They looked up as the snail emerged, but their faces didn't look hurt or disappointed. On the contrary, they all broke into wide grins. The chimp gave a long wolf whistle and pumped his fist in the air, scattering flaky crumbs heedlessly over his own head. "Looking good, little bro," he whooped. "Looking real sharp, brother." The elephant smiled broadly, her eyes shining. "You look wonderful," she said. The giraffe was beaming. The snail stared at them, confused. He had washed off all the paint, hadn't he? Were there some bits round the back he hadn't managed to get? Or, and his heart gave another guilty lurch within him, were they just trying to make him feel better about his own plain, dull shell? Slowly, he twisted his head and looked back at his little house. He gasped. His brown shell was covered in delicate, intricate patterns. Double rows of minuscule dots in white, emerald green, and heather purple looped and wove together like lines of handwriting, some following the shell's spiraling wall, others dipping and zigzagging back and forth along the ridged curves, interlacing so tightly that it was impossible to tell where each one ended or began. One row was more solid than the others, all three colours following the same line, so the white dots alternated closely with the green and the purple. It began at the apex of his shell and wound all the way around until it looped on itself just behind the snail's head, forming a somewhat shaky but definitely recognisable circle, his own signature. The snail stared and stared. A lump was forming in his throat. He looked back at his friends who were still grinning at him. "But how did you—" "Ah, here he comes now," said the giraffe, raising his coffee cup in a toast. "The maestro himself. A masterpiece, sir. What an accomplishment." There was a pattering noise behind him, and the snail turned to see Rodney making his way towards him, 2 coffee beans balanced precariously at a cardboard holder. The ant looked tired and dishevelled, his antennas sticking up at mad angles and a smudge of coloured powder on his forehead, but he too was beaming triumphantly. His feet were covered in paint, white and green and purple forming tide marks on his legs so that he looked as though he were wearing striped socks. He hurried up to the snail. "Do you like it?" he asked eagerly. "I know I'm not an artist or anything, and it's nothing like what you can do, but I just thought—" "I love it," whispered the snail hoarsely. "It's beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Rodney." Rodney shuffled his colourful feet shyly. "And thank you all," said the snail, turning to the rest of the team. "Thank you for, well, just thank you." "We're just so glad you're happy," said the elephant softly. "You've brought us so much joy with your beautiful art. We wanted you to be able to have something beautiful for yourself too." "And unique," added Rodney. "Something to make you feel like an individual." Just then a group of ants hurried by on their morning commute. They passed the rest of the team without pause, but when they spotted Rodney, they slowed, whispering to one another. "Hey, cool shoes, Rodney," a couple of them called out, and the others nodded admiringly. Rodney's face glowed as red as a match head. "Thanks," he stammered. The Snail grinned and turned to admire his house again, shining like a polished conker in the sun, dappled and vivid with its fine, intricate complexity of lines. Then he looked back at the rest of the team. The giraffe had a large flake of pastry stuck on his nose, and the elephant was laughing at him and reaching up with her trunk to brush it away. The chimp was tearing a corner off his croissant for Rodney. Feeling more at home than he had ever felt before, the Snail went to join his friends for breakfast. The end.
Yay! So charming.
Very, very, the most wholesome thing in the world ever.
So cute.
I am so there for Elephant Joyce.
Oh my God, Zach has brought me peanut butter cup ice cream.
Topped ice cream.
What a babe.
What?
Technically, it's peanut butter ice cream with peanut butter cups chopped up on top because I can, yeah.
I think it probably still counts.
It'll do.
Thank you for listening to my story, everybody.
Hooray.
Yeah. So now we have another couple of things left before we finish the evening. We have the grand finale of the Storytime Terrible Man tournament, which I believe Katie is preparing as we speak. And then we have a musical performance from the wonderful Lyric to round us off. So firstly, grab your voting sticks for the grand finale of the ultimate Storytime Terrible Man of the Year. And it's a three-way competition between Francis Reynaud from Chocolat, the terrible magician from The Golem and the Genie, Ibn Malik, and Cornelius Locke from The 10,000 Doors of January. So I'm going to give you...
I put the wrong Ginny in, but just you all know in your heads that it's the Ginny from The Golem and the Genie, not the Ginny from 1,000 Nights.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to give you a little bit longer, tiny bit longer to think about this so that I can eat a bit of ice cream. You've got until I've had a couple of mouthfuls of this. Okay, one more.
Maybe two more.
One more.
Okay.
Bad influence. Okay. Yeah. Are you nearly ready?
One more bite. One more bite.
Boo-doo, boo-doo, boo-doo-doo. And it's over. It's over. It's over. The results are in. It's been a hotly contested battle. So many terrible men, all being so terrible. Who is it? It's Locke. It's Cornelius Locke. Let's have a big round of applause for the most terrible man. Cornelius Locke.
What a dick.
You know why he won, though? He was both of the things that Ian said earlier, because he's terrible on a personal level to January for all of that one-on-one shit, and he's also just trying to make the world a worse place. Like, he checks both boxes. Well done identifying terrible man criteria, Ian.
Yeah. Well done, Storytime. You have correctly, after an entire year, I'm not surprised that you are now very good at identifying terrible men. If there's one thing that I would like you all to take from Storytime, it's being even better at identifying terrible men. And now we can go out into the world and make them all battle each other for real.
Yay.
That's probably
like Battle Royale, but for terrible men.
Exactly. Exactly. Perfect. Well, this is all going to be wonderful. So, Katie, Katie, thank you so much for running and organizing that, and for just generally being such a boss and a babe, and you know, an incredible co-storyteller.
Yeah.
That was lovely, and yay! And now, before we say goodbye to everybody and to the catch-up crew, and we celebrate this one whole year of story time, Lyric is going to perform some music for us. Hold on, I'm going to mute everybody, and then Lyric, if you unmute yourself.
So this is a song called Boxes and Bottles by Fish and Bird. And by the lyrics of the chorus, when I get there, you're all gonna understand why I chose it. I love you all. Thank you for a great past year. Like the great part of it, rather than all the shit outside of it. This nice little portal in the middle of the year, you know, the vortex of happy and stories. Frankie, you can't keep moaning about the ice cream or I'm gonna get really distracted.
I thought I was muted.
That's okay. I enjoy it, don't get me wrong. You know me so well. Takes a friend like you to tell that I'm scared of dying and being alone. And I need that brand new phone. And I don't know what I would do without you. I got this aching that I can't describe. You always seem to know just what to prescribe. You show me the answer in boxes and bottles. Salvation test tube with beautiful models. And I don't know what I would do without you. And it makes me so sad to think of a rat on his wheel, running so hard but staying perfectly still. I ain't like that, you know. I'm going somewhere. I ain't seen it yet, but you told me I'd know it when I get there. And I don't know what I would do without you. What am I supposed to do? Follow me home and follow me close, 'cause I'm haunted by my own ghost. Hold my hand, hold it tight, so I can make it through the night.
without you. I don't know what I would do without you. Yeah.
I love you.
Love you. Yeah.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Lyric.
Honestly, I had to stop looking up or I was going to get distracted because you were looking at me with that face and I was like, oh God, the feelings face. Oh no, the feelings face. And I'm going to have feelings and then there's just going to be feelings all over the guitar and snotty singing.
Not feelings.
Not feelings. Oh my God. Okay. What a goddamn wonderful time. This has been so freaking nice. Okay, we should say goodbye to the catch-up crew. Catch-up crew. I don't know if anybody will ever rewatch this, but if you do, catch-up crew. Frankie, if you're in the catch-up crew, this is for you.
I catch-up crew.
Catch-up crew, we love you. Happy year anniversary, catch-up crew. We all made it together and we love you very much.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Goodbye. Goodbye. Boop, 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 doo, doo, doo.